Okay, today is day 12 of the 67 steps review. I just realized actually today that I'm not even 20% through the course because there's 67 lessons obviously. So for the amount of value that I've gotten so far, it's just crazy. So that's just one thing I figured out today that still got a few more weeks left. Um, so today Ty is talking about your Eulerian destiny. That's kind of an expression for what's your plan, what's your one sentence destiny going to be in one sentence. So, a lot of people have this question. He says, how do I know what I should be doing with my life? And this is a really common question, not just from young people, but from people, old people, all ages. So he says that in the past we didn't really need to think about this because you pretty much did what your father did. So that's, if your father's a carpenter or a blacksmith, that was your name and that's what you did. And so that was just generation after generation. So it's not really something we had to give a lot of time to think about in the past. But it's something that's very important. If you really want to have the good life, you need to know what you want and you need to be clear about that. So give some tips in this lesson about how to do that. One thing he says is that from an investment perspective, he had a mentor who was an investor, but he wouldn't invest in people unless they could explain in one sentence what their mission was. So what do they want from life? What is their big idea? And if they can't say it in one sentence, then they're not clear about it. They're not clear enough about it. And so that was one sort of marker he would use, and I think that's it's kind of interesting way to look at it. So Ty's example is for his one sentence destiny, and I guess you have one for each, right? You have one for health, wealth, love, and happiness in his system. But for the business one, which is what most people are interested in, is his one is spreading good ideas using mass media. And so that's 6 words. It's really short to the point. It's quite broad as well. It gives him a lot of scope of what types of media to use. But pretty much he wants to be spreading good ideas. So yeah, that's something I kind of resonate with. I've always wanted to help inspire the people as well, and the best way to do that is through mass media, because I guess if you're just teaching one to one or you're coaching a group, you can't really reach as many people as you'd like to. So I think that once you have some expertise, some credibility, then you can start to help other people. You might be good in business but not so good in health, so you shouldn't offer health advice. And I think at the moment I'm pretty happy with my health. I'm pretty, I've gone on a big journey of transition, so that's one area I feel comfortable to help people with if they ask for my help. And so I definitely want to spread good ideas around health because the world is so full of sick people, people that just don't have the energy to get through the day anymore. So that's one area I want to focus on. But business-wise, I think I still need a bit more work to build up my own business before I start to offer, real business advice. So Ty says you might think you're good at lots of stuff, but if you think about it on a global competitive scale, there's 7 billion people out there, and where are you from 1 to 100? If he says if you're not a 95 or 96 or 97, you won't even make it in most industries. So for example, like singers and actors, they may be really good in their town, but then they go to Hollywood and try and make it, and obviously they're not good enough. Maybe they're just a 90 or an 85. And so you can be average or good at lots of things, but what are you really good at? What's the one thing you're going to excel in? Because you need to build around that, and that's going to give you the biggest chance of success. So think about that. Where are you really 95 out of 100 or higher? He says, when Michael Jordan, obviously one of the world's best basketball players, he tried to switch from basketball to baseball later in his career, and he completely flopped because even someone as great as he could only excel at one sport. So we all think, we've got so many options. I could do so many things, but actually, we're probably only average or slightly above average if we're honest compared to everyone else out there. So why focus on that, and why try and do lots of things, at a mediocre level when you can do one thing really good? So basically, most people are delusional, think they have all these choices, and the way he gets to think about where you are now in terms of your fulfillment. When you wake up in the morning, do you wake up with a spring in your step because you're so excited to get started with your day, and you're so driven by your one thing, your passion, and where are you from 1 to 5 stars? So for me, it really depends. If I set my alarm clock, I'm definitely not jumping out of bed at 5 a.m. With the same energy that if I'm waking up naturally around 8 or 9 a.m. So I think I'm pretty excited about the projects I'm working on. There's definitely some challenges, but I think there's just so much potential and so much opportunity that you have to focus on a bigger vision. And so I've got a lot of different ideas, different projects I'm working on, and I think for me, I never really thought about speaking and coaching because I was more of an introvert. So maybe this is a way that I can reach a lot of people and help a lot of people without having to step in front of a big audience straight away or transition into that. So for me, I definitely like talking about health and fitness, and entrepreneurship as well, and that kind of lifestyle freedom and time freedom. So I think for me, it's that personal sovereignty. It's finding the time freedom in your life and having that personal sovereignty. So around your health, around your finances, being really, for me, being really independent, that you're not a slave to anyone else. And so that's kind of my passion, what I think about a lot, and that's kind of why I do a lot of what I do. So I think I'd like to help people with that as well, if that's something that is important to them. So he gives some examples as well in the business world about this, doing what you're really good at and dropping everything else. He says that the CEO of GE, which is one of the biggest companies in the world, Jack Welch, when he came in as a CEO, he looked at all their businesses that GE were doing. They had like 300 different lines of businesses, so they're just in every single industry, doing light bulbs, doing all kinds of stuff. But he looked at all the lines of business and he said, what can we realistically be number one and number two at, and everything else just kill it. And so for him, that was selling all these different parts of the business, taking the cash and reinvesting that into the things that they're really good at, or that they can be number one and number two. And with that strategy, he grew it into one of the biggest companies in the world by market cap. So that's a good example of someone who understands that principle and applies it. Instead of being having your attention all over the place and divided, comes back to this focus thing. Find the one thing you're really good at and double down on that. So. Then he gives an example of Leonardo da Vinci, who was, people say, what about this guy? He was good at everything. Obviously, Da Vinci, great at art, knew a lot about science and anatomy, building war machines, all kind of stuff. So this guy was just one of a kind. And he says that, there's always an exception to the rules. So someone like Leonardo might come along every 500 years, but what are the odds that that's going to be you? So, so that's interesting. I think that we probably all feel more passionate about one particular area, and so that's all part of the process of finding your Eulerian destiny. And then he has some exercises on that I'll come to in a minute. He gives this funny example of people going on Pop Idol and these music talent shows, which I used to watch when I had TV, and it's just hilarious because these guys are the most delusional people. That they think they're great, and then they get on the mic and then they're just average or worse than average, and it's just painful to listen to some of them. So I thought that was quite funny that we probably all do that in some areas of our life, not just the guys on Pop Idol. So this Eulerian destiny is basically figuring out what's your primary focus, what is your real strength, what's your signature strength, he calls it. And there's an exercise he uses these 4 intersecting circles that kind of overlap, and then that helps you work out what you should be focusing on if you're not sure, or at least give you some ideas, some direction to move into. Is look at where they all overlap, where do they all meet. So you probably could do this exercise, like I said, for health, wealth, love, and happiness. So I'm going to just focus on maybe wealth, for example, or business. What sort of career you should focus on, because that seems to be a question most people have. So the first circle is what did you grow up around? Who were you raised by? What were you exposed to? Because when you're young, you develop this subconscious map of how you view the world and how you think the world will treat you. How it works. You develop these ideas, these maps at a young age. And he says that's why most people stay poor, because they're surrounded by poor people. They stay in their class, or if they're surrounded by rich people, they tend to stay rich because of their beliefs that are imprinted at a young age. So look at what you're exposed to, any particular beliefs or backgrounds, and that's give you one idea of what your strength will be. And so some people have very challenging backgrounds, but that again is a sign that that's one area they've had to grow stronger in. So maybe that's still worth looking at. And so for me, this is interesting because I grew up in a very different environment to most people. I actually grew up in a community which was kind of isolated from the rest of the world. So kind of like the Amish, but not as cool as the Amish. And and basically we always taught to question everything and be skeptical. And so that's always made me kind of an independent thinker. I didn't really buy into a lot of the stuff that this community also talked about. There's a religious aspect to it. So I always questioned that as well. And so I've always been kind of looking around and saying, who can I really trust? And I've always been independent because of that. So I've always seen the world from a different perspective. And I think that's why when I finally joined the real world, I went to school, went to college, went to university, the whole time in the back of my mind I was thinking, this is not the right thing. This can't be all there is to life. And I questioned it, even though I didn't have any answers. I still didn't buy into it, and I wasn't happy. So I knew that this couldn't be everything there was to life. And then throughout my jobs obviously had some success and was able to do a lot of learn a lot of cool things, but still it wasn't fulfilling, and I still thought this isn't my life. I'm building someone else's company. I'm making someone else's dream come true. I'm making someone else rich. What's in it for me? The second I stop working, then I have no money, and have nothing left. So I've always trying to question and see what can I do differently, what can I do better. It took me still a long time. It took me 8 years to get out of a 9 to 5. But better late than never. Some people don't get out for 20, 30 years, so I consider myself lucky. So that's the first thing. What did you grow up around? How did that shape you? How did that mold you as a person? And how does that affect your worldview? So for me, it's absolutely being skeptical. Now I'm pretty skeptical of government, of politics, of anyone, because I realize that everyone's it's pretty self-serving. It's in our nature to be selfish. We can't help other people. We have to help ourselves first. So I think it's important to focus on building a happy life for yourself, and then inspiring others, through example, and not sacrificing your dreams for someone else. And that includes, going to work for a 9 to 5. If it's not really a dream or a vision that you're passionate about building, then why are you working for that company if you're not happy? So that's the first circle to look at. The second one is, what have you had strangers feedback to you on? What do they consistently compliment you on? So this is not your family and friends, and they might tell you you're great at this, you're great at everything because they love you. But strangers are going to be the most honest, and you can get some insights you couldn't get from other people. So I don't really solicit a lot of feedback from strangers, so I'm not sure what to put here for myself. I'm going to definitely think about that, and I think that my friends and family have told me a lot of things, but maybe because I'm more of an introvert, I don't have that many conversations with strangers over the course of my life. So that's probably one of the things I should go out and do, and ask people who I meet and see what they say. So that's the second circle. Maybe that's more useful to you. The third one is, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? And you shouldn't ignore this, because even if you don't like your job, you've probably been honing a set of skills and refining that for a long time. So let's say you're doing sales, but it's in a job you hate. You might be able to take that sales experience and expertise and apply it to something else that you really love. And so you shouldn't write off your experience because it's something you've spent a lot of time on. You don't just want to throw it all away, even if it's not a job you love. So for me, obviously, I've been mostly in the corporate world, doing IT, project management, and consultancy. I think that's helped me with my communication a lot. So I've had to learn to talk to a lot of different people. Maybe not verbal communication, but writing emails and structuring projects and presentations. Always trying to be mindful of other people's perceptions, how they're going to look at certain data, and just trying to shape people's opinions, and kind of steer the conversation. So all those things you have to learn in as a consultant, which I guess is kind of manipulative, you could say, but it's definitely how the world works. It's all about perception. It's not necessarily how hard you work; it's how hard others think you work. So that communication, being aware of other people's perceptions, that's one thing I could definitely use to my strengths. In marketing, it's very related to that. Maybe that's why I like marketing, because it's all about perception as well, and showing off the benefits, how you can help people as a business owner. As a marketer, you're always thinking about how can you add value and help other people, and make them see that. So, because it's not good enough to help people if they don't see the value. So those two are kind of related. Maybe that's interesting. That's interesting strength that I pulled into my current career. And then obviously, as an IT consultant, knowing a lot about computers, a lot about the internet, a lot about all the technical side of it. So some really technical stuff I probably don't need to use now, but it definitely helps. Able to run a business online, and so just being around computers, touch typing really fast, being able to use applications and things, and work my way around Windows, and knowing everything pretty expert level. I think that just helps all aspects of running an online business, makes you faster, more efficient. So I think I definitely, and while I was doing my job, I was on the side also learning about online marketing. So I think that kind of lent itself to me going in that direction, because I was able to leverage my time to learn and develop an online skill. So that's the third circle to think about. What are you doing now? What have you been doing for the last 10 years, and how can you leverage that into your new, or whatever, pivot that into your new direction? And the fourth one is, this is really good. I like this one. He says, what can you talk about effortlessly on a Saturday night with your friends? So if you're just sitting down, hanging out with people, what naturally topics of conversation do you like to talk about? And so for me, that's definitely health and fitness is one major area. I don't like to preach at people because sometimes people have very strong views about things. You know, I'm friends with vegans, I'm friends with paleo people, I'm friends with all kinds of people with uh, different beliefs and different knowledge levels. So I don't like to preach to people. But if someone asks me a question about something, I can happily talk all night. And me and my brother will often have conversations that's going all night, and we'll bore the rest of our family with all the health. With all the health knowledge, we debate about. So that for me is the number one thing. I think lifestyle freedom and entrepreneurship is something that inspires me because I've seen the change it had in my own life, and so I like to talk about that. I like to share that with other people, but again, only if they're interested. So think about what can you just talk about for hours and hours and hours and not get tired of, and that gives you direction. That gives you an idea of what direction you would be happiest pursuing, because that's something that comes naturally to you, and so you wouldn't see it as work. So he says if you have to go on a vacation from what you do, you shouldn't come back to it, because that just implies that you're not really driven or passionate enough about what you're doing, full time. Otherwise, why would you need a vacation? And so he gives an example of physical health, that there's no one size fits all. You kind of have to discover what racehorse and race course you should be on. So some people are built for basketball, these giants like 6 foot, 7 foot people, and some people just shouldn't. They might enjoy it, but they'll never be good enough to make a career out of it. So when you think about your Larian destiny, you can separate the health and the wealth, for example. And this is one thing I thought about, because I love playing football and I really enjoy it. But I'm never going to be the best footballer to become wealthy doing it, because I'm definitely not a 95, out of 100. But it's something I really enjoy, so I could just play it to keep me healthy, and that would keep me happy in terms of that Eulerian destiny, because I keep doing it, and I really enjoy it, and I can talk about football a lot, so that's also something I follow quite passionately as a sport. And then if you're playing in a football team regularly, or you go to weekly football with the same crowd, you're going to develop that part of that kind of tribe, or that group of friends that you have a lot of social interaction with and develop close bonds with. So that again, you're stacking these different pillars. You're stacking your health, you're stacking your social happiness, and when you combine those things, that's when you find true happiness and true fulfillment. So probably I should do more of that, even though I travel a lot, so it's difficult when I'm traveling to find a regular five-a-side. But I do really enjoy it, and so not necessarily going to do that, to pursue wealth, but definitely for my healthy Larian destiny, that's something that could be quite fulfilling. So that's something he talks about. It's really about knowing yourself, and all these exercises, all these 4 things you think about, it's helping you to know yourself better, because that's really the key to achieving success. And Ty gives an example. His background and his destiny has always been a lot of social interaction. So his family is always very outgoing. He worked on a farm with Amish people, and there's a lot of strangers and people interacting with you on a daily basis, hundreds of people. He worked in nightclubs. He ran social networks online. So all those things are kind of revolved around a high level of social interaction. So it kind of makes sense to put that into his life if that's what he enjoys. For me, I'm not that outgoing, not that extroverted. So recording videos like this, with no pressure and no audience, is maybe a lot more comfortable. But it still helps me to inspire other people. So you got to find your place, fit in it. It says don't let the media fool you with getting distracted by all these things you could be doing. But what can you really excel in? And obviously, run experiments. Don't be afraid to change when you have feedback, and don't run your experiments too long, because it's a shame to waste time. But basically, you want to have this 6-7 word destiny and keep it simple. And so the exercise he gives us, what's yours for business. So I really like Ty's one, spreading good ideas through mass media. I think that that's definitely a part of it. But I'm going to obviously try and refine my own. When I have it, I'll share it. So definitely worth thinking about that, to clarify and crystallize that. And again, do one for health, do one for wealth, one for love, and one for happiness. And love is not just your romantic partnership, but your family as well, and your friends, and the love you have in those areas. So think about what's your one sentence destiny, and you can't. How are you going to get the good life? How can you get the good life if you don't know what you want? So it's got to be specific, got to be clear, simple, refine it down, and obviously don't try to be good at everything, because that's going to make you mediocre at everything. So that's all the things I took down for today's lesson. Super inspiring stuff, really enjoying the course, so I definitely recommend it. I'll be back tomorrow with more.